Happy Friday, Funsters. The Dan Man is here. Welcome to Nice Podcast Stupid. We have a very special guest tonight, a man that truly needs no introduction. He is the new mouth of the South. He is the fifth horseman. He's the Steel City Brawler, my brother from another mother, Mr. Rusty Loudermilk, the star of Wrestling with Rusty. Rusty, how are you this fine evening, sir?
Oh, doing fine, Dan. Let's talk some wrestling and anything else you want to talk about. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Great. Well, thanks for joining, Rusty. So, Rusty and I were both big, huge fans of wrestling. We're also big, huge haters of Sam Roberts. Before we introduce you, Rusty, why don't you tell a little bit about your thoughts on Sam Roberts?
My thoughts on Sam Roberts is every once in a while he gets it right, but he's basically a clown. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure he could spell clown if you spotted him everything but the C. But that being said, he does do some good things, but overall, in my opinion, he's one of those you can either take or leave,
Yeah, we're no big fans of Sam Roberts here on this show. But yeah, Rusty, thank you so much for joining. So I found Rusty on the old YouTube machine. I've been looking for a co-host to talk wrestling for so long. And Rusty is the man. Rusty has been, how long have you been doing YouTube for, Rusty? About 3 years now or 4 years?
Since March of 2020.
Okay, awesome. So you've been in the game for a while. How long have you been an actual wrestling fan?
I started
how far
going
back
to
you go?
Say that again, sir.
I'm sorry. How far back do you go as a wrestling fan?
Probably since about 1972 until the present day. I mean, I started when I was 3 years old. And I was born in '69, and my life hadn't been the same since. But we'll talk about that, I guess, later. But yeah, from like 1972 to present day, and you talk about being old school. I'm old school to the core, and that's one of the reasons I don't like most of today's product.
Well, join the club because I feel the same way. What's your earliest memory of wrestling? So you said you'd go back to, it sounds like the early 70s. What's the original memory that you have of wrestling and the first couple of times that you actually saw some wrestling and really something that you remember up to this day?
Well, as far as on TV, Wahoo McDaniel and Johnny Valentine just beat the dog crap out of one another, and that just amazed me because even though back in that era, of course, we didn't know it was not real. But if you ever go to YouTube and watch a Wahoo McDaniel versus Johnny Valentine match, they just stood there and beat the dog crap out of one another. They didn't do no high spot off the top rope or anything like that. That was a brawl. It might have been fixed, but it was still a brawl. You get my point?
Absolutely. How much do you think wrestling has changed since then? I mean, I know the flippy thing is a big thing, but what do you see as the biggest changes between then and now?
Okay, don't get this wrong. I'm for all the guys to work and make as much money as they can because most of their careers are short. Not everybody can be like Sting and Ric Flair and stay in the business for almost ever. But and my point is, the biggest change is the money and the lack of respect for the business. I know before we went live, I was telling you the story about when I grew up and knew the Crockett family and some other people and went in the dressing rooms. If they had somebody in there that didn't hold true to kayfabe or tried to make fun of the business, as they do now, which we'll talk about in a second, I guess, but they would just throw them out. And I'm not talking about throwing them out of the dressing room. I'm talking about most of the time they just throw them out the damn back door, period. End of discussion. And now it's in other words, for whatever reason, it's lost its respect. In other words, some people purposely treat it like a joke, like that damn Orange Cassidy.
Oh, he's the worst.
Like
Pockets. Yeah, he's a complete clown. I couldn't imagine.
Oh yeah.
Did I lose you there? Are you still?
I can't hear you, Dan.
Okay.
I'm still here, but I can't hear you. You're breaking up.
Okay. Hopefully that's It's this damn Xfinity, my friend. Can you hear me now?
Oh, I understand. Yeah, yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yes, Orange Cassidy is a complete joke. I don't know how somebody
No
can
problem.
sit there and have him with his hands in his pockets and think that this looks like real wrestling. I mean, it's a complete travesty. But why don't you tell us a little bit? If my audience hasn't picked up yet, you have, is it cerebral palsy? Is that the disability that you have?
Yes, I'm
Mhm.
full time in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy. I know some people do walk with CP and some don't, but in my case, I don't and have never have. Sometime in the early 70s or early 80s, I maybe walked with a walker and some braces around the house. But after I fell, like in 1982, I just decided to stay in the wheelchair full time. But yeah, to answer your question, I'm full time in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy. And wrestling got me through it because back in the day when long before there were wheelchair accessibility laws and wheelchair apartments and stuff, you couldn't go many places if you were in a wheelchair because it was not accessible. And so wrestling got me through some tough times. I'm still here today because of wrestling. I mean, I met people like my longtime friend until he passed away in 2021, Don Kernodle. I knew Ivan Koloff. I was privileged to have both Don and Ivan's phone numbers. Um, and I was just shocked when I first heard Ivan talk without the Russian accent. That just kind of blew me away. In case the fans don't know, he was actually Canadian. He was born on a farm in Canada. He was not Russian at all.
Oh wow. You
Yeah.
already got one fan in the audience. He hates Sam Roberts. Good enough for me. So Li Chomper is already a big Rusty fan. So you're already going over with the audience, Rusty.
All right, Chopper and anybody else, go to Rusty Loudermilk on YouTube. That's RUSTY, and then Loudermilk is LOUDDERMILK, like speak louder and give me milk. Rusty Loudermilk on YouTube, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It won't cost you nothing.
So yeah, if you guys do nothing tonight, subscribe to Rusty's channel. I want to get the numbers up for Rusty. We got to get
Yeah.
this guy monetized. I want this guy getting super chats. I want Rusty to overtake Sam Roberts in the online wrestling game. So definitely go online, look up Rusty, Rusty Loudermilk 4010 on YouTube, or search for Rusty Wrestling. You can't miss it. Rusty, you do videos almost every day, right? You're pumping out some good
Yeah.
content. Pretty much, if somebody
Yeah. I
dies
just
or
titled
there's
the
a big
channel as
wrestling
Rusty
story.
Loudermilk.
I'm sorry. Can
I
you hear
said
me?
I just titled the channel Rusty Loudermilk if they want to try to find it.
Okay, yeah. Search for Rusty Loudermilk, just like it sounds. Rusty Loud Milk, louder milk, louder than milk.
Yeah.
So yeah, check out his channel and
Yep.
sign up.
Speak louder and give me milk.
Hey, so question for you. Somebody asked in the chat. So you
Yeah.
you said you were in a lot of dressing rooms back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Did you see anything like with drugs? I know you were talking about rats before. Did you what kind of stuff did you see behind the scenes that might have got you in trouble that you really weren't supposed to be seeing about the business?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. We probably don't have time to go into all of it, but let's start with the drug part. I saw Ricky Morton have cocaine in a paper Dixie cup. I saw Sam Houston, who is a piece of shit. Excuse my language. Um, he's a piece of shit for more than just this reason, but I saw him doing cocaine out at the back door of Memorial Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina.
A lot
Um,
of a lot of coke back in the day. Then that
oh,
was that was the
absolutely.
drug of choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Not my drug of choice. I don't do drugs, but
No, no,
yeah,
no, absolutely not.
it was definitely their drug, no doubt. And then I remember seeing it was either Tony Atlas or Pistol Pez Watley. Pez is now dead. He was a good dude, but I remember one of them getting a blowjob out back of what used to be Park Center in Charlotte. Now it's Grady Cole Center. It was a very small, approximately 2,000 seat arena where the Crockett started doing their matches before they moved to the Coliseum and stuff. But yeah, wrestlers used to get blowjobs and other type sex acts out back of the arenas, and and
So,
stuff.
if you went out back like during the event, like you go out back and the rats are on all on their knees giving blowjobs in the
Yeah, well,
alleyway.
yeah, well, basically, imagine this: you drive up in the little handicapped short bus that most of you might know is called paratransit. You drive up in the short bus and you look to your right and you see Pez Watley getting a blowjob. That's not a good, not a good sign. I mean, it's like, oh my God, they just corrupted the guy in the wheelchair. But yeah, I guess the worst thing I've seen would probably be there used to be an old time wrestler in the NWA. He also later became the ring crew guy for Crockett Promotions, and then later WCW when Crockett sold out to Ted Turner in '88. Klondike Bill. I saw Klondike 3 days before he died. So the worst thing is seeing all the death. But as far as gags and stuff, I remember seeing like girlfriends in the dressing room, and some of them would service other guys, even with their boyfriend there. I mean, it's. Let's put it this way: if I didn't have CP and a good mom at the time, wrestling would have destroyed my childhood from all the stuff I've seen. Or not just my childhood, but anybody's childhood. You shouldn't. Yes, you need to grow up, but you shouldn't have to grow up that fast.
Speaking of that asshole, Sam Houston. Sam Houston was the one that was married to her, right? You said.
Yes, Sam Houston was married to Baby Doll. Screw you, Sam. I hope you die a very horrible, horrible, painful death, and I shall live to drive my power wheelchair and piss on your grave when you die. Sorry.
High number asked, did you ever meet Miss Elizabeth? Any thoughts on her legacy? Did you ever have any run-ins with her or see her around?
No, she was in my day. She was only in the WWF, so I never got to go in the WWF dressing
You were just
room.
you were a Crockett guy. You were a Crockett NWA kind of guy.
Oh yeah. Still, even though it's been out of business 35 years or more, I'm still an NWA Crockett guy. I watched WWF at the time and all, but I never got to meet WWF guys. Usually only people in the Crockett territory, because I was really good friends with a guy that just recently passed away. I call him the Forgotten Crockett, Jackie Crockett, who was not only 1/5 owner of Jim Crockett Promotions and the old NWA, but he later became a good cameraman for Crockett Promotions. And then after that, he was a cameraman for the WCW from the inception of the Ted Turner owned WCW in '88 all the way through their demise in 2001 when they closed down and McMahon bought WCW.
What would you say was the best promotion of all time? Do you think Crockett was the best in its heyday, or what do you think for the best overall wrestling promotion?
Oh, well, it depends on the metrics that you're trying to go by. If you look in terms of money and popularity, then it's got to be WWF/WWE. But if you look in terms of in-ring quality and the seriousness of the product, then it's definitely got to be NWA Crockett.
Do you see a lot of blades? Was blading a big thing back in the day in the South? Did you see a lot of that?
Oh yeah. I remember Ivan Koloff, my friend, had cut himself so much he didn't even have to cut himself no more. He'd just take a Band-Aid off.
Oh wow! You just poke at it and it starts bleeding.
Yeah. But I never saw nobody make their razor blade, but yeah, there was a lot of. I remember in the Park Center that I just told you about, this now Grady Cole Center over there in Charlotte, a match between Ivan Koloff and Mr. Fuji. And as you
Fuji
know,
was a wrestler for a while.
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't realize that. What years was he wrestling?
I don't know when he started, but I remember watching him in the 70s. He worked for Crockett as a heel, and ironically, even though Ivan was a heel as well, I remember Ivan and Fuji wrestling, and I remember Fuji and SD Jones wrestling when both SD and Fuji were in the Crockett territory.
Now, speaking of managers, So obviously Fuji's, at least for my audience, is probably more known as the manager. Like he managed a bunch of guys. You also knew Oliver Humperdinck. Is that a guy that, or you met him
Yeah.
before?
Yeah, I didn't have his number or nothing, but I used to because of the lack of accessibility in the country at the time. I used to go to the TV tapings in the '80s that were done in the early '80s in Charlotte, which was WPCQ Channel 36 is now under different call letters, but they used to tape the show there in the early '80s, and because of my lack of accessibility in the studio as well as my wheelchair, they would always have to bring me in first and push the fan bleachers back, get my wheelchair in so I
So
could
you got preferred access
sit
at these shows because of
on
the
the
wheelchair.
floor down by the ring and then pull the bleachers back out and bring those. Yeah,
Nice.
exactly. Exactly. And so, long story short, Sir Oliver Humperdinck, his real name was John Sutton. But most people that knew him or had a relationship with him, like I ended up having, we just called him Red, but he, because of his red hair, he was a wonderful, wonderful human being, just absolutely great guy. But if your question was to ask me who are the greatest managers, you'd have to go with number one would be Bobby Heenan. Number two would be Jim Cornette. Number three would be Gary Hart, and then fourth would be Humperdinck. And let's try to pick one more in there. Probably the fifth manager, I would say, would be
Sherry was pretty
an old
prolific.
who?
Although Sherry Martel.
Oh, from your lips to God's ears. There's only one other
Somebody
one.
said Somebody said Sunny. We don't like to talk about her.
No, the reason why I wouldn't want to deal with Sonny, even if she wasn't in prison now for killing a guy, for God's sake. How many DUIs do you need to get before you wise your ass up? But anyway, I digress. Forgive me. But what I'm trying to say is, I would much rather have Sherry Martel before Sonny any day of the week. Yeah.
Yeah. Sunny was a piece of work. Actually, we'll flip over to her too. She was quite the looker, but not so much anymore. She's
No.
don't do drugs and drink, folks. This is what happens. You become a complete waste of life. I mean, she's 51 years old and she's pretty much ruined her life permanently. It's Sherry all day. Tivo DeVito says.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So,
but my all-time favorite woman, I was telling you before we went live, Dan, is Baby Doll, Nicola Roberts.
Okay, so yeah, so let's go to the question I was going to ask. So
Sure.
F, marry, kill.
Okay.
You get Baby Doll as one option, Sensational Sherry is another, and then Mickie James, who I know you've met in public, right? You said she's a sweetheart. You met her in public. She's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So of those three, F, marry, kill, Baby Doll, Sensational Sherry, and Mickie James. What way you going on that one?
Mickie James, F, because she's good looking and she's done porn, so she could make the guy in the wheelchair want to get up and walk. So that would be the F. Mary would be Baby Doll, so I could die a happy man. And kill would have to be Sherry, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, no, it's actually probably the right answer.
Yeah,
Baby Doll. F, Mary, Baby Doll, kill everybody else.
There you go. Husband. Yeah. She's now living in a small town in North Carolina, Hudson, North Carolina, and she's married to Chad. So Chad, if you see this, don't come after the guy in the wheelchair. But Sam Houston, you're still a piece of shit. You left her with $20 and 2 kids. So there you go. I'm sorry, Dan. Forgive me.
So you mentioned before. No, Ed, Rusty, we are all good. You could say bad words on this show. In fact, we definitely endorse that.
Okay.
So another question. So you mentioned your favorite managers. Who is on your wrestling Mount Rushmore? Who are the 4 like quintessential Mount Rushmore wrestlers for you? I definitely have mine, and I'm probably biased from the era that I grew up in, but I would love to hear who you have on your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers.
Well, again, it depends on what kind of metrics you are dealing with. If you're talking about the four that drew the most money, you'd have to start with Hogan, and then Flair, and then Piper probably, and then Savage. As far as who drew the most money,
I'd probably switch Piper with Andre the Giant. That was who I was thinking as my four.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because Andre did more movies. He did television shows. A lot of people just know him from the Princess Bride movie, but don't forget, Andre did several appearances on the old $6 Million Man TV show with Lee Majors back in the 70s.
Oh, really? I didn't even know he was on that one.
Oh yeah, several times, not just once, but several times.
Did you ever watch the WrestleManias? Did you used to get those pay-per-views? Or I know you weren't as much into WWF, WWE, but were you into the those events, those kind of quintessential WrestleManias?
Yeah, I didn't get them on a regular basis, but I remember watching WrestleMania 1. I went to a closed circuit location for number 2. And then by number 3, I think I had pay-per-view capabilities. I really liked WrestleMania 3, except for like the midget match with King Kong Bundy and all them. But the my favorite match of all time from the WrestleMania area would have to be Steamboat and Savage, because even though it was a WWF ring and a WWF show, Steamboat and Savage did an old school NWA Crockett style of match with that Intercontinental title match between Steamboat and Savage.
I don't know if it was that match that I read about, but I know Savage was notorious for really planning out his matches, like being really deliberate about it. So like, that they planned that whole thing out, right? That was a whole big.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If you ever get a chance to interview Steamboat or meet him somewhere in person, ask Ricky, when they were even on house shows before WrestleMania, Savage would go, okay, Steamboat, what's spot 39? And then wait a few days. Okay, tell me spot 42. Now, and that was back in that era where wrestlers didn't plan things out. You did what we call it in the ring.
You're about to do the Irish whip and you like whisper in their ear, like what the next thing is.
Yeah.
You see that sometimes where you catch them kind of, under their breath, sort of calling out the shot.
Who was worse about doing that? And I think anybody that I saw, even though Hogan drew more money and everything, Hogan was worse about, letting his lips move during the match kind of thing.
Hogan was?
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and watch those.
Yeah, you are, especially on go back and watch the Saturday night's main events. It's like, would you shut the hell up? You're exposing the business there, buddy.
By the way, thank you, Tivo DeVito, new YouTube member. Thank you so much for being a member. We really appreciate you supporting the show.
Tivo DeVito. I used to have Tivo back in the day. That was some good stuff, man.
High number says Bruno Sammartino, Andre the Giant, Randy Macho Man, and the Iron Sheik. Any thoughts on either Bruno Sammartino or Iron Sheik? Any thoughts on either of those guys?
Iron Sheik was a great guy. I met him several times. Big into cocaine, and he loved.
I'm not surprised with that.
He loved calling himself Sheik. I am WWF champion.
Sheiky baby. I'm Sheiky baby.
Yeah, exactly.
I humble you, old country way.
Yes, I am going to blank you in the ass. But anyway, I digress. But I never had the privilege of meeting Bruno, even though I currently live in Pittsburgh, where Bruno was an icon. I didn't move to Pittsburgh till 2007, and I never got a chance to meet Bruno. But Ivan Koloff, my dearly departed friend who passed away in 2017, he worshiped Bruno, and they basically talked, to my knowledge, every couple of weeks. And also a little trivia note for your audience. When Bruno needed some time off and was going to give up the WWF world title, he went to Vince McMahon senior, not junior, but senior, and said, I want to drop the belt to Ivan Koloff. And that's the reason that Ivan got the championship.
Oh, wow.
That's number one. Number two reason is because they needed some way to get it from Bruno to Pedro Morales without having Bruno to have to wrestle Pedro.
He didn't want to job Pedro Morales, right? He's like, I'd rather give it to Koloff first and let him give it to him.
Exactly. And I remember Ivan telling me when he finally beat Bruno that night that instead of people cheering or even booing, it was eerily quiet because the people were like, oh shit, after like 4.5 years or whatever, Bruno lost. I don't know the exact time frame, but after many, because Bruno never lose. Bruno never did the job. You know what I mean? So.
Oh yeah. Bruno was he held it for so long. He was not going to job to anybody he didn't like. Just like Hogan would not job to anybody. He wouldn't job at all. It ain't going to work for me, brother.
Well, he better be glad he wasn't working for my wrestling promotion, because if I had a wrestling promotion, whether it was Hogan or anybody else, if they told me they weren't going to job, I tell them get out the damn door. Because here's the deal, man. I hate to spoil your audience's the rest of their life, but here's a secret you may not know. This shit is not real. It's entertainment. And if you do it right, it's very good entertainment. But nobody really wins and nobody really loses. So why are you going to be an asshole and say, I'm not going to do the job? It doesn't matter. There's no real record book. Okay. They may talk about a record book, and you got Dave Meltzer masturbating in his grandmother's basement or whatever with record books, but there's really no record book. So why are you going to worry about who wins and loses? Just make sure that somebody pays you so you can make money. I mean, even though Ivan Koloff was a legend in any promotion he went to,
Rusty, you're ruining the story for everybody, man. Well, my audience is like, no, don't tell me this. I don't want to know it's not real. It's still real to me, damn it.
Yeah. Well, that brings us into another point that I wanted to make with you. If they tried to portray it as more real, I think you'd get more fans back. But they sit there and they beat us over the head year after year after year, constantly saying this shit is fake. So now let me get this straight. You want me to believe sometimes that it's real, and other times you want me to believe it's fake. Pick a side of the fence. I remember saying to you before we went live with the wonderful people here that I saw a YouTube interview with Sean Rickard, who is now not Eli Drake. That's what he started out as.
LA Knight.
LA Knight in WWE. Pardon me if I continue to say WWF. It's a bad habit. But WWE, he had this program with, I think, Drew Gulak at one point a while back. And they're like really in this major feud. And then the very next day, they're sitting on a couch on some Australian talk show. And they're like, oh, yeah, we've been friends for a long time. I don't want to know that you're friends. I want you to leave me in suspense. If I were able to wrestle, and I know I'm not, I'm in a wheelchair, but if I were able to wrestle and I was wrestling Dan, I'm coming to kick Dan's ass. And Dan and I might be a good friend outside of the ring. But if you work together and make it more realistic, you'll have more fans. I mean, people have known, even though people claim that McMahon was the one to finally expose the business, people have known something was off with wrestling. Oh, you popped up with them damn young bucks.
What do you think about these two turds?
Their balls are so small you couldn't get their balls.
The Cucamonga kids, the Hardley boys.
Yeah, I say Cucamonga assholes. But anyway, their balls are so small you couldn't suck them through a storm drain. But that's beside the point.
But they get 7-star matches though from Meltzer, so that's all that matters, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's not just their fault. It's that whole culture of get my spot in, what happened to telling a story? Okay. Let me ask you a question, Dan. If you watched a Ricky Steamboat match and a Ric Flair match Ricky Steamboat versus Ric Flair, the only time you seen them come off the top rope was either when Steamboat did the flying body press, or B, you seen Ric Flair come up to the top rope with his overused flipping upside down thing, and then coming
or that elbow that he would do, or the chops, and
yeah.
I don't even I don't even really like Flair's moveset all that much, but he could tell a story. Like,
yes.
he could really tell the story. That was it SummerSlam '92, the one that he won, or King, what was it?
SummerSlam.
SummerSlam, yeah. The one where he wrestled for like 60 minutes and beat out everyone. And Heenan's it's not fair to Flair. It's not fair to Flair. And I mean, that was just like one of the greatest matches I've ever seen. So yeah, he really knew the psychology of a fight, which was why he became who he was.
Sure.
Harley
Race will tell you Ric Flair's the greatest, and Ric Flair will tell you that Harley Race was the greatest. But you'd have to put Ric Flair up there if you're talking about just wrestling skills, with the exception of the upside down flip that was stupid. You'd have to put Ric Flair up there on one of the Mount Rushmore somewhere in terms of athletic talent. Even Steve Austin, Stunning Steve Austin, Stone Cold, whatever you want to call him, he drew more money than Ric Flair, but Ric Flair was a better technical wrestler than Steve Austin was.
So you mentioned Harley Race. He was like one of the all-time tough guys, right?
Absolutely. Did you ever hear the story where McMahon paid, I think it was like $25,000 to Harley to not show up for Jim Crockett Promotions Starrcade '83, and Harley turned it down, and then got to Greensboro and walked in this before the fans got there, because back in those days, you still had a babyface dressing room and you had a heel dressing room. So Harley skips over to the babyface dressing room and says something along the line, I don't know the exact wording, but I'll talk to you about this later, but I just turned down $25,000 to be here for you, kid. And so I think people always respect Harley for that. What's the comment up here? I can't read that. Somebody saying
Ted DiBiase wonders if Harley Race's King of the Ring win was a rib by Vince McMahon.
Probably, but I can't say for sure. But under a Vince McMahon led promotion, anything's possible. I mean, this is the same guy that sit there and talk to an egg, a plastic egg, because the company that was trying to buy time on WWE was paying McMahon something like $10 million to talk to an egg. But I guess if I was making $10 million, I'd sit here and talk to an egg too, I guess. But stuff like that.
This was one of my favorite memories as a kid. I still remember this when I don't know if they had like a whole ceremony and they walked him out, and I know that's kind of one of those archetypes that they love to do. They give like Booker T, they made him the king, and but the King of the Ring, and they walked him out, and they had every one of the heels from WWF, like all the classic heels were there, like King Kong Bundy and everybody, Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov, and like they're all in the ring, and they're all like, giving him hugs and congratulating him. It's just like such a great moment as all the heels all assembled to coronate Mr. Harley Race as the king of the Ring. It was a funny moment.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. Harley had such a reputation not only as a real life badass, but as a great worker. If Vince had a brain in his head, or maybe he wasn't even using the right head back then, maybe he was using the lower head. But if he had a brain in his head, Harley Race doesn't need a gimmick. Harley Race can get over on his own. He's one of the greatest wrestlers there ever was.
Speaking of badasses, I wanted to ask you about this guy, Haku. Every video I watch, they interview any of these old school guys. They say, who was the toughest guy you ever went up against? Or who was the guy you didn't want to mess with? And they all, almost to a man, everybody says Haku. And he poked some guy's eye out, right, at a bar or something one time.
Yeah, and he's also been known to beat up cops when they tried to arrest him. Another one that would be beating up cops would be Barbarian. But anyway, what I'm getting at is, if you ever wanted to pick a city in the country and walk down the toughest street in that particular city at 1 a.m. in the morning, Haku's one you want to take with you. You don't need the police or anything else. You take Haku with you. I've never met him, but I know people that said Haku was a legit badass.
Absolutely, yeah. And was he Tongan or Samoan? He's definitely got one of those backgrounds that seems like it's like in their blood, right? Where they're just
Yeah,
badasses.
I think he was Tongan, but he's some lineage to the Rock, because I saw a video recently where the Rock bought him even though the Rock calls him in that video uncle, he's not the actual uncle to the Rock, but there's some lineage there, and the Rock bought him a truck to say thank you to him.
Interesting. All right, I want to go through. I got some other famous wrestlers. I took a group of just some newer, some older, and I just wanted to we'll kind of do like a little speed round here for you,
Sure.
Rusty. Maybe we'll take like 1 minute or so on each of these guys, and just want to get your thoughts. Some of which we've already talked about. A few of them. We already obviously talked about the Hardley boys, the Cucamonga kids. So we don't have to spend any time on them. What do you think of Cena? What's been your perspective on him? He was kind of, I think, the sort of the torch bearer, I think, for like the big name after, like, post Austin, kind of in that transition period. Obviously, I know you're not as big into WWE, but obviously Cena's done a lot of charity stuff. Seems like seems like a pretty universally liked guy. So, and I think I mentioned I met him one time in person, and him and his crew seemed like really regular, cool dudes. And I was curious what you think about him.
Yeah, I've never met him, but he definitely was and still is an accomplished wrestler, and he brought in a lot of fans with that gimmick, So he's great. I'd put him as a top performer, but I've never met him personally.
Okay. How about this guy? This guy's somebody you met, I think, right?
Oh, thank you. I'll tell this story real quick. I know you only want to take a minute to do this, so I'll make it fast. But long story short, I lived in the same complex one time in the 80s in Charlotte, North Carolina. Back then it was called East Point Apartments. And when the lady was showing me the apartment, she says, "Oh, you're a big wrestling fan." She said, "If I tell you something, you won't tell on me, will you?" I said, "No, go ahead." She said, "You know who lives here?" I said, "No." She says, "You ever heard a guy, I think his real name is Lawrence Full, but he goes by something else." And I said, "Lex Luger." She said, "He lives here." And so I got to meet Lex Luger twice. Once in my apartment complex when he was walking outside, and then another time when I used to go up and sit with my longtime friend Abe Jacobs, who passed away at 95 back in 2023 here. Lex Luger came in at Ricky Steamboat's Mid-Atlantic Gym that's now closed in Charlotte. But Lex Luger back then was a total jerk. But I understand through my longtime friend Tommy Angel, who I know you'll have as a guest at some point on the show.
We're gonna have Tommy Angel. Now, just a quick question about Tommy.
Yeah.
Does he consider himself a jobber, or is that not cool to bring up? Because he was kind of he fought some great. I went through his video collection, and he fought some big names, some real tough guys back in the day. But he was kind of the person that got people over, right? That was kind of his shtick.
Sure, that was his main focus. Now, if you lived in the South like me, and you also knew of smaller promotions like South Atlantic Pro Wrestling / Northern American Wrestling, or the Nelson Royal Atlantic Coast Wrestling back in the 90s or whatever, they gave Tommy a push. But to your point, for everybody else, Tommy was a jobber, but he's a great jobber, and he doesn't mind you call him a jobber because that was his role. He knew from the time that see, Crockett was having ratings trouble in the early 80s and financial trouble. And it calls up Gene Anderson, who was semi-retired at the time, and gets an old timer down there, Nelson Royal, World Junior Heavyweight Champion Nelson Royal, to train guys. And they trained at Nelson Royal's ranch in Mooresville, North Carolina, which is still there, about an hour and a half from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I'm from. And Tommy was in that class, and that's how Tommy broke into the business. But it's better when you get Tommy on to tell that story. But anyway, back to the Lex Luger thing real quick. Lex in those days was an asshole, but I understand from Tommy, in talking to Tommy, Tommy does a lot of work with Nikita Koloff, and Lex Luger, and Lex is saved now and truly a decent human being. But back when I met him, I used to say, well, hell, that's 15 minutes of my life I'll never get back. You know?
Was that before or after he corrupted Miss Elizabeth when you met him?
That was long before. He was still in Crockett Promotions when I met him. My
Okay.
problem with Lex back then, though, was not only was Lex an asshole thinking his doo-doo didn't stink, and anybody will tell you that. I'm not saying he's like that now, but that's the way he was back then. But he also had no respect for the business because he was broke into the business by Hiro Matsuda down there in Florida before he ever came to Crockett. And he just had no respect for the business or the push he was getting. And if you're a performer, whether your name's Lex Luger or anybody else, if you don't have respect for this business that I now call my business, because I've been around as a fan, 52 years or so, then I don't have respect for you. Get the hell out of the business if you don't have respect for it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching one of the videos when because Vince, I think, came because Luger, I don't know if where he was coming from. It was WCW or NWA or where he was coming from. But Vince threw a bunch of money at him, and he was going to be the new face of WWF, WWE. And they put him on like a bus tour, and they were like trying to promote him as the new big
Lex
thing.
Express.
And the Lex Express, exactly. But they couldn't get him over. Like he just the fans were just not buying it him being like the face of the company. Like he just doesn't have. He's got the look, right? Obviously the physique and the body, and an okay wrestler, but he just doesn't have that it factor that was going to make him the big shot. He was never going to be The Rock or Stone Cold or anything like that. He just didn't have that it factor.
True. Back in those days, the only person that Lex liked was Lex. Okay. And that's the one thing that, the Lex Express there. I think that's how you pronounce that. But anyway, but I understand he's turned his life around, and Tommy goes down to twice a year. Nikita Koloff has a camp and an outing called Man Camp, where they try to bring souls to Christ. And Lex Luger and Nikita do the preaching down there for that, and other types of men's activities. How to be a better parent, how to be a better human being, how not to shoot up schools like some of these other bastards are doing now, and all that. But they do that twice a year in Georgia, and Tommy goes down there and helps to serve meals, so he gets to see Lex and Nikita quite a bit. And for those of your listeners who out there who don't know this, but Nikita Koloff is actually Nikita S. Koloff now. He legally changed his name sometime years ago to Nikita Koloff. He was born, however, Scott Simpson from Grand Valley, Minnesota.
Yuri-san, side note, Yokozuna was not of the U.S. He was not one of us. He was not Japanese. Yeah, Yokozuna, he was one of he was Samoan, right? He was part of the family.
He was Samoan. His real name, I think, is Rodney Anawahi, is how you pronounce that name.
And that's the whole that Anawahi family. That's Rikishi, and all those guys are all kind of like, they're all cousins of each other, right?
Which includes somewhere in that line is actually Haku that you mentioned, but most famously it's The Rock, it's the Wild Samoans Afa and Sika. It's even the Samoan SWAT team, which used to be Rikishi as Fatu, and then I forget the other one, but all of them are family in some way.
Nia Jax, you ever seen her wrestle? She looks like Samoan with that body of hers.
Exactly. She's got what we would call down south more cushion for pushing.
So while we're speaking of lady wrestling, where do you come in with lady wrestling? Are you a fan? Or do you think it has evolved? I think over the years, it's definitely a better product than it was probably back in the Sensational Sherry days, where there was like 2 or 3, and they really were pretty limited in what they could do.
I was a fan of the 70s and 80s and even early 90s ladies wrestling. But I don't want to see, sometimes on the independent circuit now, they got this intergender wrestling kind of thing. I don't want to see men wrestle women, and I don't want to see men. I mean, I don't want to see women wrestle men. I want to see women wrestle women and men versus men, and keep it like that. You know,
Oh, you're setting me up for. I knew you were gonna do this, Rusty. You bastard.
Go ahead.
I knew you. I knew you were gonna set me up. I led you. I led you there, and you brought me over the edge.
Yeah,
So
you set me up though.
I did set you up. I set you up to set me up, and you did it. So, all right. I think you know where I'm going next. Hold on one sec. Let
Sure, go
me
ahead.
get this queued up. I got to get the right picture to. Actually, I have it on my Twitter. I think. In fact, that's where I'm going to go. So yeah, so there's a lady. And I'm using air quotes here. There's a lady wrestler in the news this week, who's having some issues in, what is it, Oklahoma?
Oklahoma.
Yes. So let me bring her up here. Her again. So yeah, you had a video which all my audience should actually check out. So go to Rusty Loudermilk on YouTube, one of his most recent videos about Nyla Rose, aka Hacking But Legal. That's the inside joke. But yes,
Yeah.
So Nyla Rose was born a gentleman, a young man, and evolved into a woman.
Ugly young man, by the way.
A very ugly young man. Yeah. So she's she is.
She's a much better looking lady than she ever was as a man.
that she got that going for her. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, Oklahoma now is, because she's intergender or transgender, I guess you would say. Transgender. It's very Andy. There's an Andy Kaufman-esque aspect to this. By the way, I love that, those old Andy Kaufman when he was doing the intergender wrestling. That's kind of what I was referring to. Thank you, Deb, for calling that out. That was some classic stuff. So yeah, what do you think about the whole Nyla Jax situation? So for my audience that doesn't know, the state of Oklahoma, and I guess every state has their commissions or their regulations that you got to get. So like if you're doing MMA, you're doing pro wrestling, you got to get them to sign off, and you got to do whatever their process is. So Oklahoma said, yeah, no transgenders in pro wrestling. So now she can't wrestle in Oklahoma, and she's with AEW. So what are your thoughts about the whole Nyla Rose situation, Rusty?
First of all, before I stick my foot or my wheelchair wheel in the dirt here, let me say that I have no problem with transgender folks. If you want to go and change your sexual assignment or whatever, that's between you and God. I have nothing to do with that. But Nyla Rose should not have been booked, not because of her transgenderism, but because he, whatever, is a sorry wrestler, first of all. Secondly,
she's not even good.
No, she sucks. But Oklahoma says that you can't have a professional wrestler who was born a man wrestle a woman. Otherwise, that's a violation of their athletic commission rules. And I think they just warned Tony Khan and AEW this time. But if they bring her back next time, they'll receive a fine. And she got on Twitter. I didn't see it, but somebody else told me about it, that she got on Twitter and said, excuse my language here, but fuck the person that turned her in. Apparently she's got some heat on the indie circuit somewhere in Indiana or whatever. And somebody on the independent circuit turned her into the Oklahoma State Athletic Commission. And I should back up and tell you, these athletic commissions are BS anyway, because all you do, you have to have a license to wrestle in most of these states that cost between $50 and $150. And that might not mean much for John Cena or The Rock, but in terms of a small independent worker who's only making $25 to $50 a night, usually, that's a lot of money. But the athletic commissions don't do nothing. It's a racket to make money for the states. And even when they come to the shows, all they do is get you to pay them the $50, and they give you your little BS card that's good for a year. And then they check your blood pressure. So you could have many other things that could prevent you from being safe in the ring, but they're not worried about that. They're just taking your blood pressure, asking you a few questions, give me $50 and out the door they go kind of thing. So it's an athletic commission, but it's really not a commission in most of these states.
Yeah, it's a total racket.
Yeah, the only thing it does good is those commissions keep like underage children from working on shows. You know, it's not like Terry Gordy from the Fabulous Freebirds. He broke into the business at age 14 or 16, something like that. So you can't do that in most of those states anymore. So that part's good. But other than keeping kids off adult shows, the athletic commissions are a joke. But if Nyla Rose wants to be a transgender, God bless him or her, ever what that is. But you shouldn't be involved in wrestling, in my opinion. Sorry.
Absolutely. Tivo DeVito, another great comment. That's why Vince called it sports entertainment. He was sick of dealing with the sports boards in every city like it was a boxing match.
Sure, but
it's so different. Sorry.
Go ahead. To Vito's point, though, that was my point on the video that's on my channel. Since it's not a sport, why do you even need athletic commissions? Pro wrestling's fixed. Athletic commissions, I understand why you have athletic commissions for UFC, because that's real, okay? But as far as pro wrestling, I don't know why any pro wrestler should even need a license, because pro wrestling's fixed. It's not real. So why have an athletic commission for pro wrestling? It doesn't make sense. Thank you for popping my channel up there.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. So yeah, everybody check out Rusty Loudermilk. You can search him, Rusty Loudermilk, Rusty Wrestling. Great channel. No frills, but Rusty pumps out good content. I love one thing I love that you do, Rusty, is you're putting out episodes almost every day, 8, 9, 10-minute shows, hitting on great topics, giving your perspective on them. Some really good stuff. So really recommend everybody checking out if you're a wrestling fan. And then loved the interview with Tommy Angel. We're going to try to get Tommy on the show.
Sure.
Want to hear definitely some. I'm sure he's got some great stories, and he seems like a really great guy. So definitely, all my listeners, please subscribe, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. For Rusty, let's pump up his numbers. I want to see Rusty get a ton, and Rusty's definitely coming back. So this ain't going to be the last time we get him on this show.
We're going to
make this a regular occurrence.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I'll be glad to come back anytime. Can I come back tomorrow? But anyway, my point is this. One of the things that got me in trouble was I knew a girl who went to the Crockett shows that I tried to date, but she couldn't date me because she thought the guy in the wheelchair couldn't provide her with a child. And I told her, I said, you see that pole over there? I said, go over and stand by that pole. I'll be over there in 10 minutes and I'll show you whether a guy in a wheelchair can do something. But she never took me up on she never took me up on the offer. But
this tongue still works, honey.
Exactly. Everything else works too, but but she never took me up on the offer. But the point I'm trying to make is years later, I found out that she dated Ricky Steamboat's partner at the time, Jay Youngblood, real name Stephen Nicholas Romero, who died back in the 80s of congestive heart failure. Thank you for the super chat, Tivo. She was only 14 at the time, and Jay Youngblood was like 30. And I remember hearing the story not only from her, but her parents. He actually comes to the house on a regular basis, sits down on the couch, and tells the mom at one point, you should get your daughter on birth control so she won't be sleeping around. Well, what mother is going to purposely, even in the 80s, purposely let their daughter sleep with a professional wrestler? So on my channel, I got 2 videos talking about Jay Youngblood where I expose his appetite for underage girls. That video is about 3 minutes and 14 seconds. And
Rusty, you're breaking some good inside scoops here, man. I never knew Jay Youngblood was a little bit of a predator there. That's
As a matter of fact, the running joke was if you were 18 and over, you were too young for Jay Youngblood. So I have no respect for Jay Youngblood. And before Mark
very
Romero,
Cumia-esque for my audience. He has a lot of Cumia in him. Sorry, inside reference, Rusty. Keep on going.
Okay. And then the other thing in the thumbnail of the first video I put up about Jay Youngblood, it's his picture, so you can find it easy. But the second video is just me in my wheelchair, and the video is right here. It's not me in the orange shirt, but the one next to me. It says something about Rusty talks about Jay Youngblood's family being mad at me. What happened was, after I put out the first video that I'm trying to get you guys to go watch, that video has 11,000 views, and this one has, I don't know how many views the second
one
has.
almost 2,000 views on this one.
Okay.
1.8K.
But for the views that for the video that Dan's talking about, I actually rant and rave about the night that either Jay Youngblood's niece or granddaughter or whatever, she called me up and said, "What's this shit about? You talking about my family member?" And it was like 12:30 at night, and I was like, "Watch my channel. I'm not discussing this with you." And I hung up. And then one of Jay Youngblood's brothers, Mark Youngblood, who actually worked in the business, called me up one night and said, "You piece of shit, I'm gonna come in there and beat your ass." And I told him before I hung up on him, I said, "Look," at that time I was 53 or 54, something like that. I said, "If you want to come to Pittsburgh and beat up a 53-year-old guy in a wheelchair who has cerebral palsy and can't walk, come on, because as long as you don't kill me after
I'm gonna run over your ass."
Yeah, after you beat me up, I'm gonna run over your ass unless you get up some steps that I can't get up. I'm gonna run over your ass, then I'm gonna put your ass in jail.
You better hope you give me a flat tire, else I'm gonna run over your ass.
Yeah, well, actually, I can't get flat tires because they're airless.
Oh, nice, even better.
Technology. You don't get flats anymore. But all he would have to do would be run up some steps. I couldn't get to him anyway. But the point I'm trying to make is, if he would have said, "Mr. Loudermilk, my name is Mark Youngblood. I used to be in the business. Could you tell me what this issue is between you and my deceased brother, Jay Youngblood?" Then I would have politely talked to the man as nice as I'm talking to you. But both of them, his niece or granddaughter, whoever she was, and then separately a different call with Mark Youngblood. They usually call me up once a year complaining. So before the Youngblood family calls me up again, I say, "Screw you, call me up. You're almost a year late. Please call me back so we can have some more fun. I'm not taking the video down. Kiss my ass if you don't like it."
Awesome. Patrick asks, "What's your opinion on the real king of wrestling, Harley Race?" We talked a little bit about him before. Harley, so you have a lot of respect for Harley. You said he was a really good guy back in the day.
A really good dude, has a reputation for driving real fast. I personally only met him like twice. He had a steel plate in his arm when he had a car wreck. He almost died. He used to drive an he broke into business by driving an old timer named Happy Humphrey around, who was like a 600-pound dude, and he used to have to shower Happy Humphrey and all that. That's how Harley broke into business. But Harley was nice outside of the ring and just a true ring general inside of the ring. And that's what I meant earlier when I said that I can't read that comment that you'll have to tell me in a minute there, Dan. But
okay.
Harley was a true credit to the wrestling business outside and inside the ring, which is another reason why I say you don't need to put Harley Race in a gimmick like the WWF gimmick that put him in King Harley Race. Just call him Harley Race and be done with it.
Visual TD Mass, ever watch OSW Review, Rusty? Do you know what that is?
OSW. I can't place. Can you give me the full name and I can tell you?
That's a good question. I'm not even sure.
OSW
Review. So I guess they must do wrestling video, old school wrestling review. So they do old school wrestling video. So I'm not familiar with them. I'll have to check them out. Yeah. They're British guys, he says. So I guess they're British guys that do wrestling videos.
I've heard about it, but I can't say that I've seen it. So no, I'll check it out too, because I'm just like you guys. I'm nobody special. I'm a fan that just saw too much as a young child. It's a wonder that I'm still here, you know.
I want to ask you a little.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so a couple of things. Number one, I want to get your thoughts on Vince. So obviously you're no big fan of. In fact, you probably dislike a lot of the stuff business wise. Probably he did, because he threw the whole wrestling world into disarray when he took over for his dad, and then he, basically broke all the unwritten rules of the territories. But if he didn't do it, somebody was going to do it, right? It was
Sure.
eventual with the TBS money for WCW, with
Yeah.
WWE, in the Northeast, and them having kind of that piece. It was sooner or later somebody was going to make that move, and it just so happened to be Vince. So, what are
Somebody
your
else.
thoughts on him?
Okay. You're right. Somebody else would have done it. But my problem with Vince, and we'll talk about the sexual stuff in a minute, but my problem with Vince was how he did it. For instance, let's go back to Harley. After Harley, I wish Harley was alive. He'd tell you this. But after Harley turned down the $25,000 to walk out on Starcade and showed up in Greensboro, but while he was turning it down and about to walk away from Vince, Vince tried to do the transaction at a bathroom. So when Harley turned him down, and Vince walked up behind him and tried to grab Harley's leg, and Harley, being a real shooter from back in the day, Harley Race was a nice guy, but he was a badass. He was like the 70s version of Haku. Even though he wasn't Samoan or whatever, he could still kick your ass in real life. And Harley ends up beating the dog crap out of McMahon in I think it was St. Louis, a St. Louis bathroom over the Starcade bribe that McMahon tried to do. And then a couple of years later, to show you McMahon will do business with anybody, after getting his ass kicked by Harley Race, he brought Harley up there and gave him the King gimmick, like Dan said. And like I said, I was always a fan of Harley personally and professionally, but Harley Race didn't need the King gimmick anymore.
He already was well respected. He didn't. It's kind of almost, it was almost sort of tongue in cheek of like, let's give the King thing, even though everybody, on the wrestling circuit knew Harley was kind of a cut above most other guys.
Absolutely. Harley could have kicked anybody's ass, and then went and took a shower, got his cigarettes out, and then got back in the car, drive 150 miles an hour to the next town and be the next show, and probably not even break a sweat. Harley was, as they say, Harley was a man's man. But to your point about, besides Vince basically helping to run anybody out of business, he did a lot of dirty things to the promotion. I like getting some of the cable companies to kick Crockett's promotion off of Crockett NWA off of TV. I know Starcade 87 was only carried by 5 cable companies across the country, because Vince McMahon told them that if you carry Starcade from those son of a bitches down south, you won't get WrestleMania, which was total bullshit, because Vince McMahon wasn't going to stop the cable companies from having his #1 show. He was just trying to bullshit them to keep Crockett off pay-per-view, and it worked until Crockett got up with Ted Turner, and the rest of the story.
Yeah, Patrick reemphasized what you said. Harley was already unofficially king of wrestling, the most respected guy around, kind of like Undertaker right now. Everyone respected him, viewed him as the leader of whatever promotion he was working. So I definitely agree with that. Salvatore asks, sorry.
I was just going to say, first match in WWF for Tommy Angel was Mark Calloway, The Undertaker. Ask Tommy about that when you get him.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, yeah, we'll have to ask him about that. I'd love to. Did he get tombstoned? Was Calloway doing the tombstone back then?
I don't remember. I'll have to go and watch it on YouTube tonight and let you know. Tommy, if you're out there, if you're watching the show live, try to type us and let us know, did you get tombstone that night?
Do you know who Ronnie P. Gossett is?
Yeah. Ronnie P. Gossett was a heel manager that basically worked in the southern parts of the country, like Tennessee and Alabama, that type of stuff.
Who would win in a fight between him and Bill Behrens?
Bill Behrens. Hell, I just told you guys all throughout this program, I'm a guy in a wheelchair, and I think I could beat Ronnie P. Gossett. He was too damn fat to move. So, but yeah, Bill Behrens would win.
Patrick mentions before he was Undertaker, Mean Mark Callis used the heart punch as his finisher. So I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah. And as much respect as I have for Ole Anderson missed the boat because he told Mean Mark Callis, his running Calloway, by the way, but they changed it to Callis for that purpose. But anyway, as much respect as I got for Ole Anderson, the dearly departed Ole Anderson, passed away recently. All his knowledge in and out of the ring. Ole Anderson missed the boat when he told Mark Calloway that he wouldn't draw a dime. Obviously, Mark Calloway became the Undertaker, and he drew millions of dollars in this business.
Okay, I got a big question. TiVo DeVito, I keep hinting at it. I haven't got to it yet, but this is like my big money question of the night. This is what it's all been building up to. We're going to talk about some other stuff, but
okay,
the Montreal screw job, right?
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Montreal, Hitman's leaving WWF. He doesn't want to give up the belt.
Yeah,
and Hebner is the ref, and they do the sharpshooter. It's supposed to be, Bret Hart reverses it, puts him in his own sharpshooter or whatever, but they do the quick count, and it's the screw job. True or false? The Montreal screw job was a work.
False, and I'll tell you why. Because so much is open about the business now. I don't even know why they use character names anymore. You should just use your real name, because anybody can go on the internet and find your real name. But what I'm trying to get at is I think it was legit, because if it wasn't, it would have come out by now that it was a work. I know why that legend started, because Scott Hall, who used to be Razor Ramon in WWF, he went on Dark Side of the Ring and said he thought it was a work, but he never provided any evidence that it was a work. Could it be a work? Absolutely. I might be wrong, but I don't think it was. I just really don't.
I saw another interview with what's his face? Scott Hall's buddy, the tall guy, Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash and actually Sean Waltman. They were doing another shoot interview, and they also contended that it was a work. I don't know if it's a whole big thing with the click there. If maybe this is their whole thing because they don't like Hart or whatever. Or maybe they're defending Shawn Michaels.
Sure.
Which would actually make sense, right? They're kind of defending their buddy. But one thing I thought that was interesting that Kevin Nash said was, do you think Vince, because Vince looked all disheveled and he got punched supposedly and he looked like he was out of control. Do you think Vince would ever allow himself to be in that position in that stage to make himself look that foolish?
No.
So maybe it's a work on a work too. Maybe he worked the work, so to speak, right? Where it's like,
oh yeah. I believe it became a work after, in terms of the Bret screwed Bret comment on Monday Night Raw. That part was a work, no doubt. But the initial screw job, no, I don't think it was a work. And by the way, you said I can rant here. So here's my rant.
Yes.
I'm a guy, with the exception of 12 years of my life, with the exception of those 12 years, I have always been poor. So cry me a river, screw me all day long, take my title, take my woman, take my penis if you want to. If you're going to let me leave a job in which I was making $1.5 million for McMahon at the time, not me personally, but Bret in this case, take my penis. If I'm leaving a job where I was making $1.5 million and going and making $3 million or more and working a lighter schedule, I mean, I don't feel sorry for any of these people. Yeah. And here's a news flash, Bret. Again, I don't know Bret personally, but here's a news flash. It's not real. It goes back to what I said. Nobody really beats anybody. So why are you going to worry about you're leaving the company to go make $3 million plus to a new environment, and just drop the belt, as we call it in the 70s, do the honors on your way out. Even if it is a guy you don't like it in Shawn Michaels, you only have to see him one more time at that point anyway. So just do the job and be done with it. And then that way the Montreal screw job never happens. And by the way, I know this personally, even though Vince Russo, better known as Shit Stain, even though Shit Stain takes credit for
bro, don't call him Shit Stain, bro.
Yeah, there's actually a podcast out there from Sportskeeda that on the front of the screen where you are on my screen, where I can see that you're behind the mic and you have on the white hoodie shirt or whatever, there's actually a bro counter. And so they counted like 26 bros one time in like a, an hour clip or something. But anyway, what I'm getting at, even though Shitstain takes credit for the Montreal screw job, the actual person that gave Vince McMahon the finish in the production meeting that afternoon was Jim Cornette. And, but here's the caveat. Vince never told Jim Cornette whether he was going to use it or not. So here comes the bell time, or close to bell time. Jim Cornette walks up to Vince and says, Vince, I don't want to know any details, but do you have a finish? Not do you have my finish, but do you have a finish? And Vince says, yes, I do. And consequently, the rest of the story, that's the one they went with. I do think people were too hard on Earl Hebner. By the way, both Hebners, the Earl and David, both started out in Crockett Promotions, not in the WWF like most people think. I didn't get a chance to meet Dave, but I did meet Earl. Earl is a super, super nice man. Nothing but respect for Earl. And maybe not this audience, but a lot of other internet audiences, they put a lot of heat on Earl for having to ring the bell, even though Bret didn't give up. But that was Earl's job. Earl would have lost his job if he didn't ring the bell like Jerry Briscoe was passing the word for McMahon,
Patrick McDonald actually has a great comment. We'll wrap up the screw job talk. It sounds like we could do a whole hour on the screw job because it's such a fascinating wrestling tale. But Patrick says Bret being the son of a promoter and whining is what's ironic. If someone was pulling on Stu Hart, what Bret was pulling on McMahon, Stu would have stretched their ass. Absolutely. And I agree with that. It's breaking all the protocols of wrestling. You leave the promotion, you have the belt, you for lack of a better term, you job the belt, right? You drop the belt, I should say. Yeah. And you put the other guy over and you go out with grace. And then, hey, you're getting a paycheck, like you said, at the other place. It's like bow out gracefully, do the right thing for the business. That's the thing is Bret was kind of disrespecting the business a little bit by not wanting to drop the belt.
Yeah. And don't forget this. Not only was he, as I just said, I don't know if you heard me because I'm rambling a lot, trying to cram a lot of stuff in before you kick me off. But my point is this. Not only is he going to make more money, but he's also going to work a lighter schedule. Back in those days, in the Attitude Era of the WWF, they were working, just like Crockett Promotions was, about 330 to 350 days a year out of 365. So if you go into to WCW at the time, you're certainly not going to work that much. So you get, in essence, you get more money and you get a lighter schedule, just like today's version of AEW. But my point is, you're getting a better lifestyle. So just, as you said, Dan, do the right thing, drop the belt, and then there has to be no problem. On the Vince McMahon scenario, all he had to do was come up with a story about why they stripped Bret with the title, and just strip Bret of the title before the match starts. I know they talk about, well, what would you do for a match? Well, you strip him of the title. You come up with some cockamamie story about why you stripped him with the title. And then you have Shawn Michaels versus somebody else. If that pisses somebody off, so be it. But because you're already going to get their money from the pay-per-view because they bought the pay-per-view at that time, But what I'm saying is, it was a bunch of grown men acting like children, but there was another way around it, and they just decided not to take it.
As Randy Savage would say, as Patrick McDonald shares, you win it in the ring, you lose it in the ring.
Amen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Amen to that. Oh, by the way, Patrick, a little known fact, talk about wasting money. WCW actually paid Lanny Poffo. He's now dead, but they actually paid Lanny a 3-year contract, and Lanny never even wrestled for WCW, but that was kind of like a favor to Randy Savage. Oh, I was supposed to wait a minute. Don't wrap it up yet. I was supposed to. I'm sorry.
We're not wrapping it. We're going to go another 15-20 minutes if you want to go.
Cool. Thanks, man. I'll go as long as you want to. But you asked me about the sex scandal, and I never
Okay, yeah,
addressed it.
let's go back to Vince.
Yeah,
The sex scandal.
never addressed it with you. Vince had a history, even back in Tommy's day, of not paying people all the money. He might pay them part of the money, but he won't pay it all the money. So this whole thing with the Janelle Grant, whether you're a Janelle Grant fan, whether you're a Vince McMahon fan, whatever, this whole thing could have been avoided if he'd have just paid her the $3 million that the contract slash NDA said, but he only paid her 1 million. So she's now complaining about the 2 million. And by the way, excuse my language, I'm not going to use the S word, but let's say
Slut.
somebody, yeah, shit.
Oh, shit. Skank.
Somebody goes and takes a dump on your head, and after, supposedly, allegedly, and after they take a dump on your head, you're going to continue to sleep with him.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
crazy.
yeah.
What about Johnny Ace? What are your thoughts on Laurinaitis? Supposedly he's a grade A scumbag from what I've heard.
He, as I heard, ask Tommy about Tommy.
Oh,
Tommy
he
actually,
had some run-ins with Laurinaitis.
yeah, but Tommy thought a lot of Laurinaitis back then, but I think just power corrupted Laurinaitis. But I also think that before this thing is over, this scandal, you're going to realize that Johnny Ace was right there in the room. I truly believe that, for at least some of the time.
What do you think? So a good comment about the money. If he just paid it, about the incident and the shitting story wouldn't have come out. What do you think? So Vince liquidated, what was it? A couple $100 million, right, out of the TKO WWE stock. He basically liquidated all of his position. Actually, it was more than $1 billion, right? $1 billion in stock that he liquidated over the last 9 months or so.
I know the 1.2 billion was just over the last couple of months, but it was like a total of 3 billion and change. And I don't mean to offend your viewers here, but truth of the matter, as a Southern boy that knew a lot of Jim Crockett Promotions wrestlers and knew what Vince McMahon not only did to Jim Crockett Promotions, but other people in the country that were trying to compete with him, I'm glad that he's gone. I'm just sorry that it's another black eye for the wrestling business. Jim Cornette has a saying. He said, Vince McMahon did a lot of stuff right for his business, but he did not do a lot of stuff right for the wrestling business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think Vince is going to pop back up again? Do you think he's got something planned? He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that likes to lose. Like they kind of chopped his nuts off a little bit, so to speak. It feels like he's kind of been blackballed. So do you think he's going to pop back up in some wrestling promotion or format, or what do you think he's going to do now?
With Vince, you never know. But before I answer that part of it, let me say he's been a failure at everything else. The XFL, the bodybuilding federation, the ICO Pro enhancement drink, whatever that is, and all that stuff. He failed. But the one thing he succeeded at was professional wrestling. And some of your viewers might not know this because you're not a wrestling junkie like I am that spends 99% of my time looking at news and wrestling stuff. But Vince McMahon only signed a 1-year no compete clause with UFC / TKO. So, and that started in January. So by January of 2025, Vince McMahon can legally run a wrestling company. And I'm not saying it's going to happen by January, but as soon as Vince McMahon or Janelle Grant, somebody wins this lawsuit, and assuming no others come forward, and assuming that the feds don't try to put him in prison for the sex trafficking, because I heard there's a criminal investigation going on too. But assuming that he gets through all that, I think before he retires for good, you will see Vince McMahon owning some type of another wrestling company. I just hope that if he owns another wrestling company, and I end up being right about that, I hope he does a better job with it than he did with some of the stuff that we saw in the WWE, like the gobbledygooker and Terry Taylor, Red Rooster. You know, I mean, and all that stuff.
Do you think TNA would sell to him? Do you think that he could buy TNA and maybe convert that into, take that infrastructure, maybe
Yeah.
get rights on like Amazon Prime or something and like turn it into like reality or streaming or something like that? I mean, I think that's one option for him, right?
Well, the other thing he could do, talking about your thing with TNA, is you got to realize TNA is only on television because their owners of Anthem Sports purchased Access TV from
Okay.
whoever it was, Mark Cuban or somebody, and put TNA on. So I could see Vince not only buying TNA, but buying Access TV, keeping TNA on Access TV, but then building up the network so that Access TV has more coverage. Because, I mean, most of those guys in TNA, I mean, even though they work in our own television, they're in the witness protection program simply because TNA has no good coverage on Access TV.
JEC says buy NWA from Billy Corgan. That's one option.
Billy Corgan, hold on, sir. Billy Corgan has said one time on Busted Open Radio that if Vince McMahon, and not recently, but in the past, that if Vince McMahon wanted it, he could buy it, certainly.
Yeah, Billy makes a little bit of a nice profit and sells it, or gets whatever he can for it. And I think it would be better. I think I would love to see Vince's last stand. Like it's kind of almost like it's like a Roman gladiator. He's just cornered. It's like it's his last shot. Go out firing. He's pissed. He doesn't want to end like this.
True.
Disgraced. Like I mean, this was his life. Like this was going to be his legacy, right? He was going to pass this on to his kids. And now the problem is Shane turned out to not really be. I like Shane McMahon, but he really was not really ready to be the business person that would need to run the organization. Stephanie probably was, along with her husband.
Yeah.
But and maybe they still will, or at least they have a position. But they, and I think probably behind the scenes now, there's some theory that Vince is still like, the puppeteer behind the scenes. But I think that's hogwash. I think he's pretty much there's no ties left. I mean, it's more of just, we'll see each other on Thanksgiving. That's about his connection.
Well, something that I find really ironic that came out on the internet, some of these other websites where these guys, sit around and just picks, like everything I hear, I don't put out a video. One, because on my channel, I don't make money like, you would. But even if I made money, some of the stuff that you hear, you just shouldn't put it out. But you're never going to make me believe something that came out this week on the internet. It said Vince, Paul Levesque, Triple H, and Stephanie do not discuss WWE matters with Vince, which I find total bullshit. You're not going to tell me that they're sitting unless you tell me they're not speaking to one another. I could buy that. But if you're saying they are speaking to one another, but yet they're not talking about WWE, no, I'm not buying that.
I love the mustache, the movie villain mustache.
Yeah. He sort of looks like what was the guy from the Munsters? I think it was the Munsters that had
or Gomez Adams.
He looked like Gomez Adams. Yeah.
Speaking of, all right, let me get out of there. Speaking of marks, or billionaires that are marks for the business. What do you think of this guy? I just had it. Hold on one sec. I'll bring it back up. I think you probably know where I'm going. Tony Khan. So Tony Khan, AEW, Orange Cassidy, the Cucamonga Kids, Kenny Omega. What do you think of Tony Khan? What do you think he can do to turn AEW around? Can he turn it around? What would be your advice to Tony Khan with AEW?
He can turn it around, but he will not. You know why he will? And then I'll tell you how he could turn it around. But you know why he will not turn around AEW? Because he's falling into the same trap that Dixie Carter fell into when she owned TNA.
He's fucking the wrestlers?
No, he's not fucking the wrestlers. No, he's too busy.
He's oiling them up though. He's he's gassing them up another way. But
they're screwing him in the ear by telling him what he wants to hear so they can get the paycheck on Mondays. But that being said, though, he can turn it around, but he's got to hire a booker, and I mean, and go old school 70s and 80s pro wrestling. And 70s and 80s pro wrestling, for the love of God, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and all his disciples, fire Orange Cassidy. And even if
Get
you want
him
to
out
keep,
of there.
yes, in a heartbeat. And even if you want to keep the Young Bucks, which I should say you shouldn't, but even if you go against me and you want to keep the Young Bucks, tell them, okay, you can either wrestle or you can be EVP, but you can't do both, because one of the things
Agree
that,
100%. By the way, that is app. You are spot on with that. They can't do both.
yeah, I mean, look at it. As much as I love Jim Crockett Promotions, with the exception of the devil himself, Jimmy Crockett, who was a piece of shit. The one thing that hurt Crockett Promotions was not Dusty Rhodes as a performer. It was Dusty Rhodes under his real name, Virgil Runnels. If you go back and look at some of those WTBS shows, it says senior producer Virgil Runnels. That was Dusty Rhodes, and they put it as Virgil Runnels so that you wouldn't know that Dusty was an on-air performer and the booker. Okay. Any wrestler, I'm not picking on Dusty. I'm not even picking on Tony Khan necessarily in this part, but any wrestler cannot be a booker at the same time, you know. But to your other points, how he can turn it around, I know he's burned a bridge with Jim Cornette, but hire Jim Cornette, shut down Ring of Honor, because I said TNA was in the witness protection program. Well, anybody in that Ring of Honor promotion nowadays is in the witness protection program, because unless you're watching on their watchroh.com app, they don't have traditional television. So shut down Ring of Honor, hire Jim Cornette as a booker. If you can't hire Jim Cornette as a booker, get Dutch Mantel, Les Thatcher, or any of those old school bookers, give them the keys to the kingdom and say, give me old school 70s and 80s pro wrestling. And what pisses me off about Tony Khan is he said at the press conference, we're going to be a sports-based presentation. We're going to bring back old school wrestling. Well, please, somebody out there tell me in the chat, how are you doing old school wrestling when you have wrestlers like Orange Cassidy? Give me some other names here, Dan.
I'm going to bring up the AEW list and I'll name some of them. I mean, some of the women wrestlers are, well, the number one, they don't get any airtime, and the ones that do, they've had so little practice that they're botching everything.
Oh, so yeah. And please, this part I'm about to say happens both in WWE and AEW. Why does everybody have to fall through 10 million tables, at least 2 to 3 tables on every show? And back in my day, you didn't fall through tables, but even when you did, a table was a finishing spot, meaning that if somebody threw you through a table, you were either getting disqualified or it was the end of the match for some other reason. But nowadays they fall through 3 tables and get up and do 10 more spots before they go to the finish.
All right, so we could go through the list. I like Samoa Joe. I'm not going to say anything bad about him, but he's fine. Toni Storm, she's got a shtick. She's okay. She's improved.
Yeah.
She's actually looks fit for once. She looked like she was not missing many meals when she was over in NXT or whatever. Exactly. Julia Hart, I don't know anything about her. Okada, or Okada, whatever his name is, came over from Japan. I don't think the average American knows him that well, but I mean, he's
true. I only know him because I used to watch a lot of New Japan when I had Access TV, but I don't have Access TV anymore because they did a New Japan show on there as well. But
there's a couple of guys we got to talk about. So Roderick Strong, let's start here. Yeah. And I don't even have that much to say about him other than is just unremarkable, right? He's one of these vanilla midgets like Adam Cole.
Yeah.
The Undisputed Era, who by the way are they look less athletic than me, and I don't look that athletic. I mean, you see these guys without a shirt on. Roderick Strong is in good shape, but he's not that big. Adam Cole looks like he's the guy sleeping on the couch, smoking weed, playing video games. Like, he does not look like a wrestler.
Adam Cole, I don't mean to pick on the guy. I don't even know him, but please forgive me. But Adam Cole also looks like he's sick. And can we please get him some kind of tan, for God's sake?
Yeah, exactly. At Hangman Adam Page. Okay, whatever,
Oh,
dude.
throw him away because he has no respect for the business.
Oh yeah, he was the one that didn't he was with Punk, right? Where he was arguing with Punk and
Yeah.
he wouldn't I read about that. I'm not going to do it justice, but yeah, he doesn't respect the business. Edge is on his last legs, and I
Yeah.
don't know what they were doing in WWE, but he looks like he aged about 20 years. His
Yeah.
not looking good with the camera work.
No, certainly not.
And then you just looked. I mean, there's just so many unremarkable. Like, I don't care. I
Yeah.
don't care. I don't care. Billy Gunn. Billy Gunn was like, Billy Gunn was when I was watching wrestling back in the Attitude Era. I don't
Yeah.
know what he's still doing
Yeah.
around.
Tony's just trying to collect life-size, real-life action figures. He's not trying to put together a wrestling promotion. And once you understand that, then I kind of, I don't get as angry now. I tell you something else he recently did that your audience might not know. He always said he would never hire writers like the WWE does, but he's now
which is so dumb. Which is the first thing he should do. He should instead of paying millions for Mercedes Vernado, aka Sasha Banks, aka Mercedes Monet, or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
How about using that money to buy better producers, better writers, even the camera work? Like WWE, all these like quick shots. It's kind of obnoxious, as an old school person, but their production value is super high. The production value at AEW, it's like WCW Nitro, but even worse. It's just really bad.
Sure.
I do like Christian Cage as a heel. I don't know about his in-ring work anymore, but definitely he's got a good character. He's been funny with his promos and stuff.
Christian Cage in TNA/NWA TNA was really a good wrestler, but I guess what I'm saying is just because you can still make money in the ring doesn't mean you should make money in the ring, if that makes sense. Go do the autograph signings and the meet and greets, but stay out of the ring. And unfortunately, that's where I am with both Edge and Christian. No offense.
Okay, now we're coming up on the clown show here. We got Dax Harwood, who's a complete mark. He's so annoying on social media. Yeah. He's the AEW water boy for Tony Khan. He's all in on that.
Yeah,
Eddie Kingston is fat and looks horribly out of shape. And then Hook, who's Taz's son, right?
Yeah.
He does not look like a wrestler at all. He looks like the teeny bopper at the mall who's picking up chicks at the Orange Julius. He does not look like he should be in a wrestling ring.
A rumor has it that Hook is on his way to the WWE for some.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I don't know that to be true, but I think there's something there. And now back to Dax Harwood for a minute. I like Dax's work, but you're right. Dax Harwood is like, come on, dude. Are you having oral sex with Tony before the show or something? My God, is he blowing?
Yeah, you guys giving each other handies before the show? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
There's some other ones. And they've got some of these Jeff Jarrett, Dustin, Rhodes. I mean, so John Moxley. But by the way, has anyone gone downhill more than John Moxley? Like,
oh my God. Yeah,
I know. It's almost like he has to blade himself, or else like there's nothing going on. He's a drunk. Although I guess he's out. I think he went into rehab. But he's
Did you see the clip though? I don't know when the show happened, but it was like 2 years ago or whatever, where he's down there blading and it just won't. It just won't.
Won't take.
It just won't come. It's sort of like me if I don't take my Viagra, but it just won't. It just won't make it. But finally, he gets it, but he doesn't realize that either the director messed up or the cameraman messed up or both. But they called him on camera and I swear this happened. It's on YouTube. I just can't tell you the title. But As Good As My Name Is Rusty and in a wheelchair, this happened. The camera guy caught a tight shot of John Moxley blading himself on camera. And then he takes and throws the blade outside of the ring so that the fans around ringside can see, well, gee, I don't know. Even if they don't know that's a razor blade, they knew he threw something out. So I mean,
Can we let Brody Lee rest in peace already, guys?
yes. Yeah.
The Reddit stuff, it's like, oh, it's the 3rd anniversary of Brody Lee dying. It's like, okay, he was a mid-carder. It's like, it's very sad that he's no longer with us, but
Yeah.
it's like, okay, come on.
Yeah, that's true too.
But this is the worst. Orange Cassidy, get this guy out of there.
Yeah, exactly.
I would if Tony Khan. So I'm gonna put out a challenge to Tony Khan. Tony Khan, give both me and Rusty $1 million each. We're gonna come in. We're gonna fix AEW. I guarantee you, if he gave us $1 million each, flew us in to Florida or wherever they're at, we could go in. We could fucking fix this. I don't know. We could fix the whole thing. We could make it better in like 24 hours. The first thing I'm doing, Orange Cassidy, you're fired. Get out.
Yes.
Like a box, you're gone.
Yeah. And even if you overruled me and said you wanted to keep the Bucks, we can't have the Bucks being EVPs and wrestlers at the same time. Can't do it. One or the other.
Yeah, everybody. We're any EVPs, Kenny Omega, the Bucks. You come in my office. Me and Rusty. It's like we're the Bobs in Office Space. Okay, we're the consultants. We're coming in. Okay, what is it you do here again? Okay, great. Do you want to be an EVP or do you want to be a wrestler? I want to be both. Okay, great. You're fired. Or pick one or you get none.
Yeah, I mean, I just told you what 20 minutes ago. It didn't work for Dusty back in. Dusty was booker for Crockett from like 84, because even though he came up with the idea for Starrcade 83, Dory Funk Jr. was still the main booker at the time. But so Dusty started after Starrcade, like November, December of 83 or January of 84, somewhere in that neighborhood, and lasted till the Crockett's sold out in 88 with the Crockett's. So the in-ring wrestler also booking never works. You know, what's the old saying? If you don't learn from history, you're destined to repeat it. Well, nobody learns from history,
Absolutely. All right, so we're about the hour 40 mark. Just last segment here, Rusty.
Okay.
I want to. Sure. I know you're old school. You go way back.
Yeah.
You know Killer Kowalski, right? You're familiar with his work and his school and all that stuff.
Yeah, he trained Triple H and China, by the way, rest her soul.
Okay. Well, speaking of Triple H,
got
an old school video here. So Triple H, this was when he was on the indie circuit back in the day, under the name Terror Rising, with manager Vito Carlucci.
Oh, Vito, man, Vito is cool, man. I like Vito. I really, really do. Vito's cool. Anybody else?
Oh, so you've heard of Vito Carlucci? That's a name that rings a bell for you?
Rarely, but yes, I like Vito. I think there needs to be more heel type managers in the business now, but unfortunately there's not. But yeah, I do like Vito.
You did a heel thing, right? You were doing that back in NC, right? Back in early 2000s.
I forgot to bring it up here. I gave you the notes on it, but in essence, I had gone to everybody in not only North Carolina but anywhere else and said, look, I know you guys have done the wheelchair gimmick, but the wrestler that's in the wheelchair always, or the manager always, jumps out of the wheelchair at some point to show you that he's really not in a wheelchair. How about we do the wheelchair gimmick with a guy that's really in the wheelchair? And they go, oh no, shit, you can't do that. That's so degrading or whatever. Okay, so let me get this straight. Even though the guy in the wheelchair came up with the character and the idea, you won't listen to the guy in the wheelchair to book him, but yet you'll let the wheelchair gimmick be done by somebody that's not actually disabled. What sense does that make? But anyway,
Rusty, would you let me give you a chair shot in the wheelchair? Would you?
It would depend on whether I could be promised to at least have a hug from Baby Doll. Okay.
Oh, there we go. We'll get Baby Doll in there to give you a hug, and we'll give you the chair, and then we'll pull her away and give you the chair shot after that.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you what, if you promise me a pair of her underwear, I'll even blade for you.
All right, let's play this promo and we'll give me your thoughts. This is funny. It's funny how Triple H has evolved, but Pay close attention to Vito Carlucci, heel manager, getting terrorizing over. So this is back when Triple H needed Vito Carlucci to get over. Let's watch this.
Okay.
Terrorizing his manager, Vito Carlucci, wrestling for the IWF Heavyweight Championship tonight.
Now, let me tell you something, Middleborough. Let me tell you something. Everyone that's watching, I've been with the rest, and I've gone out and found the best. Terrorizing right here. Look at this man. Take off this robe so I can show these people something right here. 6 feet 5 inches, 277 pounds. There's not an ounce of body fat on the man. Let me tell you something. This man, I've searched long and I've searched hard. I've been going for a championship for a long time. I've been waiting for the right person to take to the top of the IWF ladder. And guess what? Mad Dog Richard, meet Terrorizing. Tell him, baby.
Mad Dog, it's about time you finally signed your name on the dotted line to me, Terrorizing. This man got it done. And tonight, in front of Middleborough and the entire world, you go down, baby. Terrorizing, taking it home.
Let me tell you something. Mad Dog Richard, you listen to Vito Carlucci and you listen good, buddy. By the time myself and Terrorizing get through with you, you're going to be just like Dracula's elevator, baby. Think about it. You're going down for the count.
Middleborough, lock up your doors. I'm coming to your town. They better pray when I'm around.
Doesn't sound like no idle threats to me. Back to you guys.
That is some great managing. How funny is it, Triple H, listening to him with that New England, New Hampshire accent before he really learned how to cut a promo?
I was
very
about
green.
I was about to ask you, Dan. You live. You don't have to give me the address, but you live somewhere. I mean, of course you live somewhere, but I mean. What state do you? Sorry, that was a bad slip on my part. What state do you live in? Well, can you say that at least?
I can in a second, but before I do that, there was a super chat that came in. We need to make sure that we read this. It's very important.
Okay.
Testy test HK $10. I don't know what that Hong Kong dollars. I don't know what HK is.
Yeah.
Dan is into dirty diapers, according to Testy test.
No.
All right. No. Okay, terrific.
I don't exactly think that this patron here likes you, Dan, but we do thank you for the
you for the super chat. Thank you, Testy Test.
Yeah.
So I'm from the greater Boston area, so I'm a Massachusetts guy.
Well, then maybe
I did live in New Hampshire for a little bit as well. I've always been kind of about an hour from Boston.
Well, then maybe you can answer this for me, since I live in Pittsburgh now, but I'm originally from the South, as you know, Charlotte, North Carolina. Having said all of that, what is a door? What's a door? Yeah,
it's a door. Rusty, we got to close the door. It's wicked fucking cold out. Close the door.
Oh.
Close the door. I'm taking a shit. I'm in the shit. I got to close the door.
Oh yeah. And what's a neighbor? Sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the State.
I got these fucking darky neighbors next door.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fucking property fucking values are going way down with the darkies next door, the fucking neighbors.
Yeah. That was a great promo by all, but the announcer that had it there at the beginning and the end, he looked like a deer in the headlights. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out what's a door.
What's a door? So one last video. So Vito Carlucci. So that was an old video, right, for Vito, but he's still working the indie circuits.
Oh,
I want you to judge this. So you were familiar with managers. So managers sometimes will get in, they'll interfere, right? They'll distract to make the bad guy, the heel, win. So let's check out Vito Carlucci on the indies, actually in a match with, I think it's Honky Tonk Man. Is Honky Tonk Man still doing? Is he still out there?
He does the convention circuit, but he said he quit in-ring wrestling because a lot of the independent shows don't have proper equipment, like bad rings and all that.
Oh yeah. Well, this was, I don't know how far, but this might have been maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I don't know, but I think it's Honky Tonk Man with his guitar. But watch Vito Carlucci. He's got a little less hair now, but he's still doing the managing thing. He's going to be on the left side of the ring trying to interfere. Let's see what happens to Vito, and I want to get your thoughts on how well he sells this.
Okay. Oh my goodness. He saw that. if you're
That's
talking
a pretty
about
good sell job, right?
yeah, if you're talking about the chair shot, I mean the guitar shot, that was a pretty good sell job. You're right. The general rule of thumb is they usually break the instruments and then glue them back together so that when they hit them, they can break apart a little easier. But I'm not sure that that one was glued together or not, because it seemed like he really took a hard shot. But yeah, he sold it real good either way.
Did you get hit with any weapons when you were doing your heel run? What sort of stuff did they have you doing? How did you get involved with these the matches?
I'll have to off air, not certainly on air, but off air. If you give me your address at some point or send it to my email, I'll mail you a DVD, and maybe you can figure out some way to transfer the DVD.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. We got to get it on YouTube, Rusty. I want to get this. I want to get it up
Yeah.
on video.
Because the reason I say that, I used to have stuff in my pocket that I would put in the ring. There was a guy that also worked the independent circuit. He was not known, but his independent name was Michael Yamaha. His claim to fame was he was sleeping with Amber O'Neal and had her as a girlfriend before she became Amber O'Neal. She was Amber Holly on the North Carolina indie circuit, and she later became Doc Gallos's wife. But now they're split up, and Doc's living in Atlanta. Doc is another one I hate because he makes fun of the business with all this comedy routines and stuff. But anyway, to answer your question, the worst thing that happened to me was on that DVD is like 4 matches. And one of the 4 matches is my guy who wrestled in North Carolina is the Gemini Kid. His real name's Jeff Rudd. He owned the CWF, which was Carolina Wrestling Federation. And thank you for that. Yeah, about my YouTube channel, the plug there. But anyway, his name was Jeff Rudd, and he let us do a gimmick in which I managed him. He lost a loser leave hair match, but instead of the wrestler Jeff Rudd losing his hair, in the contract it said supposedly I didn't read the contract well enough. In the contract it said if Jeff Rudd lost, I would lose my hair. So I lost my hair. The only reason I don't lose at all in the video is because the clippers actually broke and stopped. But the original plan was I was supposed to lose all of my head and get shaved bald. But that didn't happen, but only because the clippers broke, not because we were trying to screw the fans.
Rusty, I have one last video I want to play before we wrap up.
Sure.
This is a gentleman. He's very soft. He's a very soft individual. He pretends to be an actual tough guy online, but he has a very weird confession. And I just want to get your thoughts about his confession.
Okay.
I was giving away free sausage to homeless people, which I had made out of the bodies of African-American children that I had kidnapped and ground up into pepperoni in my basement.
Oh my God. Here I am depressed about having CP, cerebral palsy, and being in a wheelchair. And I couldn't spell the word laid if you spotted me everything but the L. But that being said, this guy needs to be locked up. First of all, for giving homeless people sausages, because if you're homeless, you're probably hungry. Get them a damn cheeseburger at least, for God's sake. But that's beside the point. But what he said about charving up people in Africa or whatever it was he said.
African-American children. He lures them into his basement and turns them into pepperoni, apparently.
I hope that was not legit on his part, but if it was legit, he needs to be locked up and they need to throw away the key on him.
Absolutely.
Or somebody needs to find a way to bring Iron Sheik back and let the Iron Sheik take care of him, or bring back Blackjack Mulligan, Robert Delroy Wyndham, and let Blackjack take care of him in a dressing room, beat his ass for stuff like if it really happened. But these days there's so much bad stuff on the internet. Hopefully that didn't happen to the children, but
let me actually play. There's a little bit of an extended cut. It's just a few seconds longer. Let me just play the full 26 seconds and Get your
I'm
thoughts.
a pedophile, that child molester Patrick Tomlinson. I can't see my daughter because I raped her. I'm a woman beater and I'm blowing Donald Trump. I'm a racist. I was giving away free sausage to homeless people, which I had made out of the bodies of African American children that I had kidnapped and ground up into pepperoni in my basement. I have found Norm Macdonald to be funny.
A lot of fucking problems with that Pat guy, it seems like.
Oh yeah. That's one of those where we say in the disabled community now, which one of us has the disability here?
Exactly. There's definitely some disabilities there. Rusty, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. So definitely check out the Rusty Loudermilk channel, Rusty at Rusty Loudermilk 4010, or search for Rusty Wrestling on YouTube. Rusty, any other final thoughts? Anything else you want to share before we wrap up? We're definitely, by the way, we're going to make this a regular appearance. You were awesome tonight. I know my audience loved it. But any final thoughts here before we wrap up?
I can't think of anything. Do you know of anything else you'd like to ask that we didn't cover that we should have covered? I don't want to feel like I gypped the fans. You know what I mean?
Okay. Last question. Kayfabe, is it dead?
Kayfabe is dead and buried, and may it rest in peace. It shouldn't be dead because look, man, even though everybody on the planet knows that wrestling is not real and that it's fixed, I say it this way. Just give me a minute. I'll make this the last point, I promise. When I go to see the Rocky movies, okay, I know that Rocky is not really upset with Apollo Creed, okay? But if you're watching Rocky, which made millions of dollars, if you're watching Rocky and they're really getting into it and Rocky's mad at Apollo Creed, then all of a sudden they cut to a different shot of Rocky having dinner with Apollo Creed and say, listen, we just wanted to take this time out and let you know that we're really not hurting each other, that kind of thing. It would spoil the fun for you. Well, when kayfabe died, that spoiled the fun for me and anybody else of my generation, because even if I had not met and seen as many people as I did, like pieces of garbage like George South and Sam Houston, even if I had not seen everything behind the scenes more than most fans, I still want to have that illusion of pro wrestling being real. Did I know it wasn't real even if I hadn't met as many people as I did? Yes. But I still want the believability factor. And 99 times out of 100, the believability factor is gone. Like in 2019 or 20, I think it was 19, Cody Rhodes wrestled Dustin Rhodes in AEW. And that was your typical 70s and 80s brawl. They beat the dog crap out of one another. That was great. And then most recently in WWE, the whole storyline with Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns and The Rock, that was old school to perfection. So please, I know you didn't say this, Dan, but I'm saying this for our public. Please don't tell me that modern wrestling can't go backwards and do compelling storylines, because I just gave you 2 examples of why they can. They just prefer not to and continue to insult the public's intelligence. And that's what makes me offended. And by the way, I'm not trying to be like Jim Cornette. I know Jim Cornette. We don't talk regularly, but we've exchanged emails, and his suit hangs in my home. And I've got a picture that I'll bring on the show sometime and show you.
Tell Jim I'm trying to connect with him. So if next time you talk to him, tell him the D-man's looking for him.
All right. Well, I don't know when I'll talk to him, but I certainly got his email address. But what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to be like Jim Cornette. I just want wrestling to go back to some respectability and at least try to bring myself and others back into the illusion that it is real, even if it's not real. And that's the problem with modern wrestling, is they don't even try to do it anymore. One last statement, I'll let you go, Dan. I recently saw something last night that Jim Cornette's head would explode if he saw it, but I don't know how you send the link to people, but you should go find it and send the link to Cornette. I give you his email address. But the point is, over in Japan, they got some smaller promotions, and they got like this knockoff Ronald McDonald type character, if you remember Ronald McDonald from McDonald's.
Yes.
And he doesn't say he's Ronald McDonald, but he's dressed in the red and white shirt with the yellow overalls, and he doesn't have the McDonald's logo, but he's got everything else that Ronald McDonald would have except the McDonald's logo. And he goes into a 3-person match where it's 2 guys and a girl.
Oh, did we lose Rusty? That was going to be a good Japanese wrestling story. All right, we're gonna play my music. We're gonna have Rusty back. Interesting way to end. Ronald McDonald in Japan. We'll save that story for the next time. All right, Funsters. I'll see you next time. Peace.
Hey, yo, what up? This Tyrone.
Fuck off.